I drive around suburban streets like many of us do and observe people's gardens. I'm a gardener myself. I'm very engaged in what people grow in their gardens, and I look around what people are gardening. And there are little flashes of inspiration that you see around, but often the backdrop of an urban landscape doesn't lend itself to community. It doesn't lend itself to people engaging with each other, and doesn't lend itself to community gardening as such. A community farm like this puts it front and centre and creates community engagement in the middle of a development. And I think that's a model that other developers can take the lead from. There's a big movement towards greening urban environments, and it's been spurred on by the interruption of COVID in our lives.
We've found throughout the pandemic that people have been flocking to community gardens and to being able to grow their own food. There's been a lot of issues with people being able to access the food that they need, literally to survive. So if you're growing it right next door in your own backyard, you don't have to worry about the supply chain issues. People are looking for these types of things. We need to change the way that we've been doing things in the past.
It's in our interests to redesign our cities so that they're circular economy, they can cool themselves, they can capture and retain water, and they can also be food abundant.
Who wouldn't want to live in an amazing space that provides beautiful fresh food, literally grown at your front door, in the community that you're a part of? That's what people are looking for these days.
We've got total control over what we grow, when we pick it, and everything that goes into it, on it, and it just tastes so much better. You can really notice a difference.
Here at the Cape, we're attempting to develop a food abundant neighbourhood. We're putting in place the principles of food abundant urban design. We're looking at unlocking the great potential we have in our neighbourhoods to produce huge amounts of fresh food locally. If you look at cities through a horticultural lens, we have huge amounts of rainwater runoff, huge amounts of surplus nutrients. Historically, a lot of that's gone to stormwater drains or to landfill. We can intercept those in water tanks and also through composting, and we can divert that into food growing architecture, like this pop-up farm that we have behind me, and we can grow lots of food out of the urban environment. We're producing over 1/2 ton of produce in this small backyard farm, and it's so abundant that it's too much for the people living in this house. We're giving it away to our community. Similarly, we're building this big community farm right in the centre of the community, and we're spinning a whole lot of food out of that space. And in lockstep, the big community farm and lots of these little decentralised home farms are going to help create a food abundant neighbourhood.
The Cape Farm at Cape Patterson in Victoria is an exceptional example of what community farms and gardens can look like in this day and age.
We believe this big community farm at the Cape is going to become the social heartbeat of the whole place. I think there's so many environmental and social benefits to be had by a facility like that that it really should be the centrepiece of any new community. Our message to the development industry is don't be afraid of building a really great state-of-the-art urban farm in your development. I think you're going to get it back in spades. It's a form of desirable green infrastructure, and I think people will love you for it.
When you think about what are the benefits of community gardening in a food production sense, it has a kind of an environmental benefit in that it's local food production, it's reducing food miles, it's making people conscious of the food that sits on their plate, and it's giving that sort of connection to where food comes from. But there's also, and I think this is equal if not greater, the social benefit of how people interact and learn from each other.
I'm Raeleen, I'm a permanent resident down here at the Cape, and I'm all about healthy living. Just love the idea of growing my own produce and eating healthily and seasonally. But I've had no experience in gardening before, so to have an opportunity like this where there's so many people coming together with different experiences and all sharing their ideas and their skills and their produce, it's been fantastic.
I think it's going to be able to really bring people together and really activate the whole space and build the community.
What are these things? Is that like a little...
Yeah, I want to show you that. This is a little in situ worm farm. Having this means that the worms migrate in and out and they drag nutrient out.
I can be throwing food scraps into this bit, which the worms will digest,
yes,
and I can still have a plant growing right next to that.
That's it. And those plants will be putting their roots straight into that. The growing system that we've chosen for the Cape Community Farm is wicking beds, so self-watering wicking beds that hold water in the base. We're using Biofilta Foodcubes. They're made in Australia from about 80% recycled plastic. They hold around 100 litres of water per square metre in the base, and it waters up through capillary action, and the plants reach down and draw the water up. It means that you only have to water the farm maybe once a week during summer, and during winter they capture rainwater. Often you don't have to water them for months at a time. So it's super low maintenance, and they're up off the ground, so they're nice and ergonomic. We're harvesting rainwater from stage 1 of the estate, and it runs down a big gravity pipe into a big 230,000 litre water tank, and that's then plumbed to the whole farm. Our engineers estimate that that'll empty and fill about 12 times a year, so we'll get about 3 million litres of harvested rainwater back into the farm. For people who are planning cities and landscapes, urban farms are a great tool. They act like a wetland and a sponge, and they can protect downstream waterways.
It's hard to see by eye, but from the top to bottom, we step down 6 times, and not just this way, this way. It is actually a very low part of the estate, so it was a quite wet area, so we had to really keep that in mind as we were building it. Cape Patterson being the point it is, it does get a little bit windy from time to time, so we've had to adapt. Kate, our amazing landscape architect, has put together an awesome concept which we've tweaked a little bit along the way with lots of these windbreaks and stuff that you can see around me. All these windbreaks here make it for a perfect protection for the plants. We've planted the top half of the project at the end of last year, and it's all just blossoming now, but it's all food. The whole garden's going to be edible. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
The Cape Community Farm is a social enterprise. It's a not-for-profit, but it's got the ability to make money through a range of business activities. And we're going to be employing a full-time farmer to oversee this beautiful asset.
I think it's vitally important for community gardens and community farms such as this to be both environmentally, socially, but actually especially economically viable. The model that we've got here is such that there are shared spaces, there are communal spaces, there are private spaces, and some of those can be an income stream for the whole community, some of those can be a sharing economy for the local community and interacting between gardeners, but all that means that there is a way of funding and sustaining this setup.
We're very encouraging of developers that actually want to incorporate these community garden and community farm spaces and urban food growing practices into all new developments that they're designing. It is becoming more popular, and we want to see that become the norm. There are no barriers to how much food we can grow in our cities and in our urban developments. We've got the technology, the ability and the capability to be able to grow food on our roofs, up our walls, on our balconies, at our front doors. It's just a matter of having the will and the means to be able to do it.
Urban farming won't replace the great work that's done by our farmers across Australia and across the world, but it will augment food supply. You know, having a productive, abundant food growing system like the one I'm sitting in produces a half a tonne of produce per annum, and that knocks a big hole in your food bills and also provides a great amount of nutrition for a household like this.